everybody. Welcome to the Talkative Chick podcast. Today's guest is none other than Paul Farahvar. He's a Chicago-based comedian, and you can see him everywhere in Chicago. But he also goes countrywide, and he's very funny. If you've not caught one of his shows, please go see him live. He's hilarious, and it was great because he's a former lawyer. So we talked about the Menendez case because I have been obsessed about it. So we talked all things Menendez, and I addressed this book. And I kind of said it was called The Defense is Rest, but it's not. It's called The Defense is Ready. And this is Leslie Abramson's book. And I read it a long time ago. I need to reread it again because it has a lot of stuff about the case. And now she's not talking about it at all on any interviews or anything. She does not want to talk Menendez at all. I think it was a hard time for her, obviously. But I really found the book interesting, so it's a good read. It's an older one. I don't even know if you could find it. It's here. But yeah, we had a great conversation about the Menendez and then Jussie Smollett. We touched on him a little bit. He talked a little bit of politics. I'm not really politically driven, so I just kind of listen to those conversations when people bring them up. But also, one thing I wanted to say, we did it right after Chicagoland stand up, and that was the only time that we could do it. So we did a different format because my brother and he and I could not get the same schedule going. So you'll see one camera, but that was just because I wanted to get this episode in because the sentencing was supposed to be December 11th. So I wanted to get it in before that. Well, now I just heard yesterday that the sentencing moved to the end of January. So the possible resentencing of the Menendez brothers. So that's why I keep saying December 11th, but now of course you'll hear in live that it's end of January. But it was a great episode. I hope you enjoy. Like, subscribe, comment if you wish. Thank you so much for listening. I'll just start us off.
You have to clap. Just kidding.
Welcome to the Talkative Chick podcast. My guest today is Paul Farahvar. How are you, Paul?
I'm swell.
That's good.
We just did a show. So.
Yes, we just did
Wired.
a show at Hobart Art where Paul.
Such a cool
killed
room.
it.
Yeah, such
Yeah.
a fun room, and yeah, you're crushing it with those shows there.
Thank
I talked to
you.
the staff afterwards too. We happen to have mutual contacts, so it was cool.
Yeah, it's really fun. I've done. I think that was like the 18th show, so it was really.
Oh,
It was
really?
really
Okay.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been there for a while, and I'm very fortunate to be there. It's like really nice and
Yeah, it was sold out,
it's not
right?
great. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
it's sold out, which is awesome. Yeah, one question I have for you because I know from your stand up and everything that you used to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because it intrigues me because I wanted to be a lawyer at one point, but I grew
Sure.
up kind of Baptist and it was either like do God's will and be a Baptist teacher or be a lawyer and not do
Do
God's
the
will.
devil's work. Yeah. Be the devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Do
So,
opposite things.
right. Totally. And my mom was kind of really wanting me to be a teacher. Great time. I actually taught at a Baptist school for a while. I had a great time and everything, but that was that one thing I was like, man, I would have loved to have been a lawyer. So of course now when I watch law shows or anything, I'm like, oh my goodness, I could have done pro bono work. I've watched, Making of a Murder. Have you watched Making of a Murder?
I think so. I saw the
Which
one.
one?
Is that the one they had one with John Benet Ramsey?
Oh no. This
Okay.
is the one where this guy, it's like a long the season 1 is long,
I have
season 2. It's like a documentary, but there's a lady in season 2, a lawyer, and she's like a badass. And she was gonna try to prove that he was innocent. And I was like, man, I wish I could help her, get her a cup of coffee, like
Is
just
it
be around
it's a
her.
documentary?
Yeah,
Or
it's a
oh, okay. Yeah.
documentary on Netflix.
Okay. I
Yeah,
don't know if I have
called
seen it.
Making of a Murderer. It's a long story.
I didn't do criminal law. I did
Okay.
litigation.
Okay.
But as part of that, sometimes it would envelop into like criminal stuff. So
Okay.
I defended municipalities. So if they wrongfully convicted somebody, for example, or been accused of wrongfully convicting them, then they would sue the cops and I would represent the cops. And so I
Oh,
would have cases like that. One of the cases I had was against Johnny Cochran uh, in his law firm. He died before the case went to trial, but like
okay.
we did have cases like that. It was high
Oh,
profile cases that were in the news defending various cities and cops when they got sued. That
interesting.
was one part of my life. The other part
Yeah.
was car accidents and
Oh, okay.
someone that had a whiplash injury
Okay.
or someone that um, choked on an olive at or no, chipped an olive tooth at a freaking salad.
Bar?
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say Olive Garden because I know those olives are big in the
No, there was
salads.
a seed and an olive at a restaurant, and they sued the restaurant. The guy had like $200 of chipped tooth, and he sued him for like they sued my guy for like thousands of dollars. They're like,
Oh my
yeah.
god.
So the range was everything, but I actually was the lawyer that goes to trial. Like we had
Okay.
trials um, for most of my life. That's what our firm was known as, like trial specialists. By the time it
Okay.
got to us, that means the case couldn't settle. It had to go to court
Wow,
most of the time.
interesting. Okay, so every lawyer I've spoken to,
Mm,
and I say this story about how I wanted to be a lawyer, blah,
mhm.
blah, they're like, "Oh, it's so good you're not a lawyer." Like, did you think that or
No, a lot of
did you love
people
it? Okay.
I loved my job. I A lot of people think that I hated it and that's why I did comedy.
Mhm.
I There were parts of the job that I loved. I
Okay.
loved going to court. I loved trials. I loved going to depositions, things of that nature. I didn't like research. I didn't like doing the busy work. I didn't like doing like I don't know what you call it, like just the stuff that worrying about getting clients and answering to clients sometimes they were annoying.
Okay.
So
Hmm.
I didn't hate it. The stuff that I liked was happening less and less because more cases were being settled, and that means we were having less trials. And
Oh,
so the part I didn't like was we'd prepare for trial, and then I'm like, "All right, are we really going to trial?" And the client's like, "Yeah, we're not." I go, because a lot of times the case is about to, their cases will settle like they'll say on the court steps
okay.
because they'll settle right
Oh, right
before,
before
and
you
it's
go
like, who's going to
yeah.
play chicken before? And
Mhm.
my client would be like, "No, we're not going to settle. We're going all the way." And I'm like, "Okay,
Mm.
that's how I'm treating this case. I'm going to stay up all night."
Oh
I'd
my
I'd
god.
sacrifice like shows that I was doing or auditions for TV,
Oh,
and
wow.
then sure as hell they would settle, and I'd be like, "You said we
Oh
weren't going to settle
my
this
god.
case." So that shit would happen. Sorry, was I allowed?
No, yeah,
Okay.
you can cuss in here, yeah. This is
So
totally cool.
so when that's the stuff I hated.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I loved my job. I loved being a lawyer. I
Oh,
miss it sometimes. So
interesting. Do you?
yeah,
Okay. I was always wondering that. I was like, I thought you were gonna be like, "I hate it. I just can't take it
no,
anymore." Okay.
I loved it.
'Cause you were a lawyer for a long time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
20 years almost on and off.
Wow.
I did. Yeah, like there are times where I'm like, I wish I could still practice law.
Okay.
I can't because I don't have an active license. I didn't get disbarred or anything,
Okay.
but like people ask me legal
Yeah.
for help. I'm like, I can't. They're like, "Hey, can you
Oh. Oh.
write this letter?" I'm like, I literally cannot. I can get in a lot of trouble.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
and because if I want to practice again, it's not that hard. I just have to get
Right.
insurance,
Yeah.
which costs thousands of dollars, and I have to take
Yeah.
all these classes.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So I don't
then
miss it.
okay.
I mean, I do, but I don't.
Okay. So then you were just kinda like, "I'd rather just do comedy full time and just go do it."
So it came to a point before COVID where I had a lot of things happening at once where I was like, okay, I got to take a chance on this. And if it doesn't work, I'll go back to law.
Oh, okay.
I was on tour with a national touring comedian. I got a job writing for a television
Oh my
show.
god.
And then my podcast at the time got accepted into South by Southwest.
Okay.
It was a dating podcast. You did it,
Yeah.
where we were going to interview the guy who started Hinge at South
Okay.
by Southwest, and we had a couple other possible guests.
Okay.
And then, so I closed my office on like March 1st, 2020. And then 2 weeks later,
Oh,
everything went away. So I was like,
wow.
what did I just do? So yeah,
Oh my
this
God.
was a hard
Interesting.
struggle for that first year of COVID. So
Yeah. Wow.
so that's what happened. And in my head, I was like, all right, well, I'll try it for a year, and then if not,
Mhm.
go to law. But yeah. So now we're like 4 years removed from that.
Okay.
And I'm
Interesting.
just doing comedy now.
Oh, wow. That's very cool. Um, okay, so one of the reasons I wanted to bring on the
Sure.
podcast
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is because I am obsessed with the Menendez
Sure.
case. Wow. Where do I begin? Okay, first of all, like I've gotten through the YouTube rabbit trail of like all the old footage of the original
Yeah.
trials and like I started reading the book of the lawyer, like it's called Let the Defense Rest. I was reading
Which
that a little
lawyer?
bit.
Abramson?
Yes.
She wrote about this?
Yes,
Oh, I
she
didn't know
wrote a
she did.
book. Yeah.
How long ago?
Oh my gosh.
I did.
A lot when
Okay.
it was I think shortly after
Yeah,
it
yeah,
went
yeah.
on or whatever. And then, like, I did watch the whole thing, the thing on Netflix,
I
The
watched that.
Monsters,
Yeah,
okay.
Monsters, I watched
What did
that.
you think about that,
I
first of
thought it was pretty good. I
all?
mean,
Okay.
obviously it had a slant,
Yeah.
but I thought it was pretty accurate from what I knew about the case and what I
Okay.
remember about it.
Okay.
I didn't read her book. I didn't know she talked about this case. I mean, how was she
Yeah.
allowed to do that?
Well, it's weird because she doesn't really wanna talk now, like, all the new documentaries, she does not like,
Yeah.
I think I have it on my bookshelf. I'll have
What does
to
she
dig it
say?
out there.
Do you remember
Well, she was just going through the legal case and like how,
they were innocent?
yeah, how
Oh, so
she
she
really did believe that
oh,
they were
wow, okay.
innocent. Yeah,
That's
totally.
interesting.
Oh yeah, she really did believe the defense story and all of or the abuse story. So, having said that, do you believe the abuse story?
Uh, I personally don't think that it was to the level that they were talking. I do think that again, this is just based on my overall summation of based on what I remember about what
Mhm.
happened initially and what I've gone down the rabbit hole to some extent. I watched the interview with them both
Yeah.
on Netflix or one of those where they're
Okay.
in jail. Did
Yeah.
you listen to that
Yeah,
one?
yeah, the audios or
Audio.
whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
My opinion, based on the information that I saw in the evidence that was presented in the first trial
Mhm.
and the second trial, um, I think that they were probably abused physically by their father, but I don't think
Okay.
there was any sexual stuff.
Okay.
That's what
Alright.
that's based on, again,
Yeah.
my personal
Mhm.
whatever.
Okay.
I think that if there was um sexual information or
Uh-huh.
sexual activity by the dad, that
Yeah.
would have come out in the first trial. There's no way they wouldn't have brought that up to talk to their lawyer because it
Well,
wasn't a strategy until the second trial, really.
oh, no, the first trial, it was, right?
It
I mean
was, but they were like the testimony. Well, right. They were, I'm sorry. It wasn't brought up initially
yeah,
until
initially
later.
when, like, cops arrested them and, like,
Correct.
to
She
the
she introduced it at the first trial. I'm sorry. I'm
yes.
mixing up
No, no,
the
no, that's okay.
so when their first argument was that they didn't do it. Then they got busted lying. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, we did do it, but
Mhm.
it wasn't premeditated. Okay,
Mhm.
it was self-preservation.
Yeah. Is
Then
it
it
really
was
is that the self-defense thing? It's called self-defense of some kind of sort, like self
self-defense has to be you have to be in immediate
Mhm.
danger.
Mhm.
Um,
But there's a legal term that they were using that they wanted it to be like self-defense of oh my gosh, why can't I remember?
well, they had to have intent to kill.
Yeah.
That's mens rea, which makes it the difference between first degree and manslaughter.
Okay.
Um, as far as self-defense,
Mhm.
I don't know what California law is, but like you can't like the way I explain it would be okay, someone tries to stab you and you
Mhm.
get away,
Mhm.
but then like the next day you go and hunt them down and kill them. That's
Mhm.
not self-defense, obviously.
Right,
You're no
right, right,
longer
right.
a
Has
threat.
to be yeah, danger.
Immediate,
Yeah.
imminent danger. So the argument has holes because they came into the house
Mhm.
by their own version of the events, they came to
Yeah.
the house and they shot them with guns
Yeah.
because they were afraid. If you're gonna defend yourself, then you could
Right.
stay in your bedroom and just wait to see if they come in,
Mhm.
and then you kill them, and then it's self-defense. If in other
So
words, if the
if
parents came in.
okay, so if the sexual molestation was true
Mhm.
and he's in his room and the dad comes in to do what he was gonna do, then did
Eric
he
was by that point, the younger,
Mhm.
Eric was still allegedly being abused by the dad,
Yeah, 'cause I guess he was 18.
18,
Yeah.
which again, you look at the size of this guy,
Mhm.
I mean, do you think
Yeah,
he
you
was
don't buy
sexually
it?
abused?
I do.
As an adult or as children?
Um, I think it's both. I really
Okay.
do. I know.
I just don't see that this Eric, you're 18 years old. I know
Mhm.
you're listen, I get it. I know
Right.
people who have been sexually, molested by family members,
Yeah.
and it's something that you stick with, but, like,
Yeah.
it just doesn't make sense in this
Okay.
situation.
Like at 18, like my whole thing was, I don't know. I feel like Lyle, the older
Mhm.
brother, he eventually like stood up for himself or something with the dad and said like, you're not gonna
Right.
touch me anymore or whatever. But I guess he didn't realize it was still happening to Eric. And then he found out it was still happening to Eric, apparently,
That's
from
what
what they
at
say.
trial,
What
correct.
they say. Um, my whole thing, like, don't you think there's like a level of like manipulation because it is your
Sure.
parent, and like sometimes like even
Of
in
course.
relationships that aren't sexually abusive, like it can be toxic
You
and
could be gaslit into believing this is normalcy and all kinds of things. But
yeah.
here's the problem with the Lyle version of events.
Okay.
When if you in Monsters, they address this, and there's
Okay.
more if you look in the evidence. He was contacting people to create this image of the father because he needed character witnesses to be like, "Do you remember when
Yeah.
my dad was this?" And they were
Yeah.
all saying, "We're not testifying." So,
Hmm.
if these kids
Mhm.
are also afraid of the dad, and that's why they didn't
Mhm.
wanna testify,
Mhm.
why are they still afraid of him when he's dead? In other words, if Lyle told
Mhm.
this to his best friend at school, in college,
Yeah.
and his version is that we were both sharing that we were both victims of sexual
Mhm.
assault, why wouldn't those people testify in support of Lyle?
Hmm.
Do you remember in the movie where they're like he was calling all those people like, "Hey, do
Yeah,
you"
but the movie's not completely
Sure,
100%. It's
but that
embellished or whatever
but
the
some of
word is.
those people were
Hmm.
gonna testify that he did do that,
Okay.
and that's part of the reason why they didn't put him on the stand the second time because they were gonna be like, did you talk to him?"
Oh.
"No," and then they can then they
Oh.
open the d so in other words,
Oh, okay. So he was saying that he had these conversations with these people, but he
so
really didn't.
so the way that I understand the facts is
Okay.
Lyle Abramson was trying to get him to find other people who
Mhm.
could
Collaborate the story.
corroborate the story of the father being at least abusive, if not sexual.
Okay.
And so he was planting this seed with all his friends, be like, "Hey, remember the time this and this happened?" And the friends were all like, we don't remember that."
Okay.
If my friend's dad was abu I know one of my friends whose dad hit him.
Okay.
I still remember it to this day.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
You're
yeah.
gonna
So you
remember that.
were in school and he came with the story and you remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
but
remember stories that people told me. Yeah.
these kids were all saying that that didn't happen. So if Lyle
Oh.
went on the stand and
Okay.
said, "Oh, yeah, one time," like, for example, if I was a lawyer cross-examining him, be like,
Mhm.
"Did your friends ever see this?"
Mhm.
And then he says, "No." You know, "Did you ever tell your friends that they saw
Mm.
this?" And he'll say, "No." Well, now he opens the door to to them calling all these witnesses to say, "Hey, didn't Lyle call you to try to get you to talk about his dad?"
That's what the perjury thing was on the second trial that he didn't
Perjury, it's not
really
necessarily perjury, but just, it would just it's called
contempt
impeaching
or
the
oh,
witness.
okay.
So, Lyle had
Mm,
so many holes in his story
interesting.
because he was
Mhm.
trying to he was proactive in trying to, come up with theories to protect himself, in my opinion.
Mhm.
So they couldn't put him on the stand. And of course, the woman that
Mm.
recorded him saying, "Oh, I totally busted all that stuff."
Yeah.
So they couldn't put him on the stand. Um, if they were abused, if he was abused,
Uh-huh.
why would you be afraid to put him on the stand in the second trial?
Hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Well, I know that a lot of the abuse was gone in the second trial, right? It was just I think that they only had
The judge
Eric
made a
go
mistake.
up
Yeah.
and okay.
There were problems with the trial.
Yeah.
I
I have
definitely
an
think they
issue
got
with the
railroaded.
judge in the second
Well,
trial.
as they talk about in all the things that LA was out for blood after OJ
Mhm.
was released. There
Yeah.
were a lot of pressure with the prosecution to get this done.
Yeah.
That being said, even if you did allow all that evidence
Mhm.
in, that's not to s there's no guarantee that they wouldn't, be still found guilty.
True. I just kinda feel like, okay, it was the same judge. So, like, to me, it's like, okay, if you really think that it's not gonna be it was a hung jury the first time, right? Like, or they couldn't
It was a
decide.
hung jury, yeah.
So, why not just play it out again, same way, and a different jury, and yeah, maybe they would
Well,
have been
they
found.
would have done that, but what happened was, new things popped up, mostly that Eric had, this woman wrote a book about Eric.
Yeah.
So for his defense, it changed their strategy because he was their key witness that they could
Mhm.
no longer use. And
Okay.
in the meantime, they were also trying to Eric was trying to bolster his testimony, not Eric, Lyle was trying to
Mhm.
bolster the testimony by having his friends also, testify
Mhm.
to this. Look,
So that's where he went wrong when he started trying to create the
he
narrative.
fucked up so many things for his lawyers. I mean, he was the worst.
Mm.
Here, let's go to what you said about the judge.
Yeah.
If the judge did exclude certain evidence, he and by the way, people talk about that, but the judge also excluded a lot of things that would have been far more damaging, like the tapes of the psychiatrist. None of that stuff came in either case.
Okay.
That would have my if I was a juror and I heard
Mhm.
that stuff, I would have been like, okay, that's going to hurt him more. So
Mhm.
yeah, he made a lot of possible errors, but I also think that those necessarily wouldn't have protected them from getting convicted. Maybe it would have been less time,
Mhm.
but the errors that were made by the judge, even if the argument now is the judge didn't believe that a rational juror would believe that a male could be
Mhm.
um, sexually assaulted.
Mhm.
That was that's what the new prosecutor that's reconsidering everything is saying.
Yeah.
If you
Because in
believe
the first trial, all the females wanted them to be like have manslaughter charges, and all the male jury members
right,
wanted them to be life in
right.
prison. They did not believe them.
But
So
you also have to remember if that information did come in, prosecution's strategy would change too. And if I'm a prosecutor, I'm like, okay, yeah, if you want to believe here, if that did come in, everyone assumes when they hear that the
mhm.
prosecution's going to be the same. It's not. If I'm a
Mhm.
prosecutor, I'd be like, okay, well now we have to adjust, and they would adjust too. And I don't know for certain if they wouldn't win again. I think they would. There's definitely a strategy to say if I'm again, I've never been a prosecutor, but I'd be like, okay,
Mhm.
then my argument would be like, even if you are to believe,
Mhm.
first you say we don't believe him, and
Right.
here's why. Here's all the impeachment that you bring in, where all the
Okay.
calls, all that stuff gets in now, right? Because
Mhm.
the stuff with the psychiatrist will then come in for sure.
Mhm.
And then at the end, I would say as a catch-all, I'd be like, even if you are to believe all this stuff and he was sexually assaulted,
Mhm.
how is this not premeditated murder?
Mm.
It's still they still plan to kill their
Yeah.
parents. So, um,
Okay.
that you can't take the law in your own hands. That's like by that
Yeah.
argument, it's like, okay, well, if a guy if a guy believes that there's rapists at a fraternity
Mhm.
and he just goes in and shoots all the rapists or these guys,
Mhm.
he's protecting the women.
Mm,
You can't
yeah.
take the law into your own hands.
Yeah. Okay.
Not to say
So
that all fraternities do that. I'm just saying you can't
right, right. You
just
can't do a justice killing in your own
it's not a
brain,
justice yeah, justice
just
killing.
thinking that it's gonna
It's
be
not the law. If you wanna make that the law, that's different, but
right.
looking at the letter of the law and again, I don't remember the California I don't remember the language that was in there, but
Okay.
you still have mens rea, which is intent to kill. They intended
Mhm.
to kill their parents.
Yeah, I mean, they did buy the guns
Yeah,
and all of that.
yes, 100%.
Yeah.
And the only time they admitted to all that,
Mhm.
to take a step back, is after they got busted lying about what was their first theory, is that there were a bunch of guys that came in and killed they said
Oh, yeah, that
mafia.
the dad had a lot of enemies because he was in the business world, and so then they were probably tied to the mafia,
Yeah.
and that's probably who killed him.
What was the
Yeah.
call that they made though too? They were, like, saying something crazy. If you listen to the
They
actual call, Ben Stiller
yeah,
used to joke about the call too in the movies, like, "They were
yeah.
Asian," or whatever, like, it's a
Yeah.
joke
I mean, there's
in a
all these, like,
movie.
pauses, and I think it was, Lyle that
Lyle
called,
made the
right?
call,
Because
yeah.
I don't think Eric had it
Eric
in
was
him.
screaming in the background.
Yeah. And there's all these, like, spacing to the call, which is weird, like, a lot of, like, spacing and then hysteria. And, like, I watched this whole body language. I'm telling you, I've gone through this whole body language experts and everything like that, that, like, you don't go, like, from monotone to, like, like, it that doesn't normally happen, like, in a
Guess what?
situation like that in a panic situation. Like,
Yeah.
you're normally, like, trying to get the words out, but, like, you're not gonna just be all of a sudden, like, silent. Like, he said a couple words, and then it was, like, space, and then it was, like like, it
But
was, like, so
the call to the police, the 911 call at that time,
mhm,
fact that they did that to cover up their tracks
mhm.
adds to the fact that this was an intentional plan to kill their parents, which
Yeah.
again, if they were a victim of sexual assault, let's just
Mhm.
assume they are. I don't believe it personally. I do think that the
Okay.
dad probably beat the shit out of them, but
Yeah.
they kind of deserved it.
Oh
I mean,
my
they were a little,
gosh.
they were
So
pressed.
did okay, back to that. I do wanna talk about with the sexual assault, okay? So have
Yeah,
you seen there's a new documentary, like Menendez versus Menudo or Menendez and
right,
Menudo
right.
or whatever.
The
So
kid said that the guy from
yeah.
Menuda said he had sexual touching or some sort. Yeah,
Well, yeah. Well, I guess the manager of Menudo like molested him and then took him to Mr. Menendez.
right.
And then that one, it was like really bad. I think he was bleeding and like he came back really hurt from that. Like he was drugged.
Sexually molested by
Yeah.
the dad.
Yeah.
Okay,
Like, I think there was obviously some penetration involved because he came
really?
back bleeding and, like, all of that, and he told the guy, like, "I'm really hurt," and he's like, "Whatever," like, the
Okay.
manager. Um, and that's, like, been the only person that's come out, but, I
Yeah.
mean, but when so if that's true, then it's kind of like, okay, then that could be, I guess that's the new evidence that they're
So
bringing
that's
up
evidence
that
that he
that Mr.
molested
Menendez
children.
is yes, he's capable of assaulting a child, or because he did that to him.
I mean, that evidence would never I don't know how that would come in a trial,
Yeah. I mean, it
unless
never
that kid testified that that happened to him, and if it's a if you're gonna show a pattern, you
Mhm.
need more than one situation, but if it all
Okay.
happened, like, within the same few years,
Okay.
I suppose so, but how old was the Menino kid when he was,
I
molested,
wanna
allegedly?
say 14 or 15
Okay.
14 or 16, something in the around that area.
Hmm.
But because that's how old you have to be in Menudo. You have to be,
Yeah,
like,
they kick you
12
out
or
when you get
18 or
a
whatever.
certain age.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the credibility. I don't know.
Mhm.
I would attack I would wanna know more from the kid before if I'm the
Mhm.
prosecutor.
I mean, I
Um,
don't think he came out when all this was
it
going
just
on,
came
of
out now
course. He
recently.
just came out
Yeah.
recently about the story. So it's kinda like, "Man, like, too bad you didn't pop up when."
Well, why hasn't any I mean, this guy, the dad was representing Menudo for years, right? I mean, it
Yeah,
was
because he
few
was like a zoning
right.
executive, and then like,
They could the Abramson could
mhm,
have gone or a lawyer could go in and there's a lot of people that can testify if they were, and it could be completely
mhm.
anonymous.
Yeah, that was probably something that she could have maybe questioned. I mean, back then they didn't want to talk about it clearly, but
Who's they?
I mean, young men
Sure,
that were
but
getting abused,
now
you know?
I would just think right now there are people that could come forward and say that without revealing who they are. They can just be like,
Mhm.
"Hey, I I
Okay.
know for a fact," or like for example, Matt Gaetz, the attorney general
Mhm,
that was going to be nominee.
mhm.
There were women that that were underage that he was having sex with.
Okay.
What they did was they hired a lawyer.
Mhm.
The women never have to go forward. They're never going to be in the public. They're never going to be identified. But
Okay.
the lawyer does the talking. That can happen here easily, especially if you're the Menendez family because they have a
Mhm.
lot of money. They can be like, "Hey, if you were molested by
Mm.
the father,
Yeah.
come forward with your story. We will
Oh,
compensate you, and you'll never have to be identified."
yeah, that would be a great thing. I'm surprised Giragos hasn't come up with that, like, haven't said that in
He
public.
had. I'm sure he's tried. I'm not. He's a
Yeah.
much better lawyer than I am. Fact that this hasn't happened, but for him, it doesn't matter
Mm.
because public opinion is now shifted and they're like
Yes.
the narrative is that this is what they want to do. But in the
Mhm.
end of the day, even if you are to believe everything that they were
Mm,
sexually assaulted as children,
mhm. Does
this
that
is it doesn't
doesn't justify.
yeah, it doesn't justify murder in the first degree.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I mean,
Yeah.
it maybe it should.
Mhm.
I mean, I have strong opinions about ways that you can solve a lot of crimes that if you want to be harsh, but unfortunately, or fortunately or unfortunately, we have rules
Mhm.
that that establish crime and punishment, and you can't just take
Interesting.
those into your own hands yet. I
Right.
mean, that could change now with the new president.
It's interesting because I guess my heartstrings bug, you know what I mean? So I in watching the first trial or parts of the first trial, like you have like the Menendez sister, and she's come and talked about how like he was horrible to them. But I
Horrible.
mean, yeah,
I don't think that he was a great father.
right.
I do believe he probably beat the shit out of him, and
Yeah.
I don't know enough about the sexual assault, but I do think that if there was sexual assault, it wasn't happening at the time that they were murdered or
Hmm.
within, you know,
Right.
frame of mind.
So, in your opinion, then clearly, like you think that they should stay in jail,
No, I
then?
don't think that either. I think
Oh,
they've served
okay.
their time. I mean, it's 40 years. Um, I think that if they have been what they got consecutive death sentences. Um, I think that there is enough evidence and there's a question of things that were handled differently.
Hmm.
But you're opening the door to a lot of people that are not high profile that have
Hmm.
had similar, way worse situations,
Hmm.
and then they're not even considered because they're not the Menendez brothers, and Hollywood didn't
Hmm.
create a story about them. But there's probably multiple people who are in jail because they were sexually assaulted by person that they killed. And so, where do you how do you address that?
Yeah.
And those situations were probably a lot closer to I mean, I know of a case where somebody found out that, his daughter was raped,
Okay.
and he went and killed the guy the next day.
Okay.
He's in jail for life.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a clear-cut case where the guy did what he did. But,
Right.
well, what how do you justify that? Like, well, there's sexual assault right there,
Hmm.
and it happened within 24 hours.
Wow. Yeah.
What's your opinion? What do you think of that? Should that guy get out too?
That's a tough one. Yeah. I mean, it's hard because, like, I mean, there's a reason why he did it, but yeah, like you said, like
Well,
he
that's what the
can't take.
Menendez are claiming, right?
Yeah, but there's a reason behind it. Um,
Well, what's your opinion on that? Let's say He got
Yeah.
life imprisonment in Mississippi.
Yeah.
But should he be released now? Because now we're all rethinking this whole
Well,
sexual.
the only problem with that is that then I guess it sets a precedent, right? Where
Mhm.
if you have a good enough reason to kill somebody, well, in your brain, or what
Sure,
they did something wrong, it's like the Dexter thing. That you can go ahead and kill these people because they're horrible people, and
sure.
it gives you like justification for that. So that's a slippery slope because, like, what if it wasn't like, what if he killed the wrong person? Like, what if it wasn't that guy that raped his daughter? Like, what if,
I'll
like,
give you an easier case. What if the woman was raped and she goes and identifies the guy who rapes her and kills him the next day? She
mm,
goes to jail for 20 years. Should she be released?
if she was sentenced for life?
Mhm.
Oh man, that's a tough one.
I mean, that's what bothers me about this Menendez thing is because
Yeah.
there's so many cases that are way closer calls with way better information that's protecting of defendants, and nobody gives a shit about that stuff because it's not in the news. But there are
Yeah.
cases like that happening every day.
Mm,
There's people in jails for selling pot.
yeah, that totally. Come on.
The whole system needs to be overhauled. I agree with that. But like
Mhm.
of all the people who are in prison
Mhm.
that I think are unjustly in prison, the Menendez are very low on my list.
Wow, interesting. Okay.
It's just I mean, it's just fact.
Yeah. Huh.
There are so many people in jail for way fucking less than
Yeah.
these
Wow.
spoiled kids.
Okay, so with the prosecutor, I
Come at
know.
me,
I will say
Menendez brothers. I'm not afraid of you. Paul.
just keeping you in if it's like the prosecutor
No,
in
no, no.
California.
I think that they have served there. I do think that
Okay.
there was enough there is enough evidence. Maybe release them. I don't know. I don't know what they're
Okay.
gonna do, but
Because I
I'm
wanted
sure they
to, like, I mean, again, this is probably not a good theory, but I mean, they're not, I don't think that they're going to kill anybody else. It's not like they're a serial
no,
killer.
I don't
You
think
know what I
so.
mean? I think that that was their target.
If I would if it were up to me, and of course
Okay.
it's not, I would say you get out, but you don't get all the money that was going to go to you has to
Mhm.
go to something like that is way beneficial, and you guys start from zero.
Oh,
I wonder
okay.
if they'll get out.
Yeah, because, okay, so if they are let out, can they get their money back?
I don't
Oh,
know
I wonder.
I don't know what happened to the money. I
Oh,
don't
okay.
know. I think it went to the rest of the family, right? I don't know.
I don't know either. Like, how does that, I mean, can you really claim an inheritance if you were the one that, like, isn't there a clause or
Well,
something?
there's
I
an
don't know how that works.
so it would go to the wife, she died. It would go to the if they didn't have a will, which again, that was another thing in the movie that
Yeah, that's true too. Like, I think
there
that
probably
he
is.
was threatening to take him off the will, but he never really did.
But if he did, whoever next to kin um, would have that money,
Maybe the sister, his sister or
probably, yeah.
something. Because I mean, a lot of those
They
relatives are
have a
still
lot of
alive.
money. Yeah, there's a lot of money in that family. It didn't just all go away. It goes to somebody.
Hmm. So there was more money makers in that family than him.
No, no, no. I'm saying that money that let's just say it was like $10 million
Okay.
for benefit after all the costs of funeral and everything like that. That
Okay.
money would go to the estate. The estate, whoever is the guardian of the estate or runs the estate, would then hold the money.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
if
Okay.
this, I don't know what this would do if they were released, but I'm sure
Yeah.
there's some issue. But the money doesn't disappear. Somebody has it. Somebody has
Oh,
the
okay.
money.
I always wondered that. Like, is there a legality? Like, does the court go like,
I mean, it doesn't go to the state. There's
yeah,
definitely next of kin that can
somebody
use
else is
someone else.
holding
Yeah,
it?
yeah. There's a line of
Interesting.
there's a line that goes in for people who don't have wills. So it goes like,
Oh, okay.
yeah, there's different
Like,
ways.
yeah, spouse, then kids,
Spouse then
then
kids. If there's no kids, there's no spouse, then it goes to parents. There's no parents, then it goes to next of kin, which it would probably be the
siblings or
siblings.
whatever.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I bet
Does
the
it
siblings
ever?
have it.
Okay, what happens if there's no siblings? Does it go to like cousins?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. I mean,
huh?
if you look at the In and Out burger, the the guy who owned all that, it
Mhm.
ended up going to the only survivor was, like, the daughter his niece, who was, like,
Oh.
12 at the time,
Oh my god.
and so she inherited all the thing maybe
Really?
more than 12. Now she's 18 or 2 now
Okay.
she's older, but when the guy who created In and Out, they went to and it was the guy who died from In and Out,
Uh-huh.
I forgot the situation, but essentially he didn't have a will. And so the
Oh,
money went to her, and he was estranged from his sister who or whoever the brother was. So it
okay.
was someone that he hated ended up getting all the money.
Oh
Not
my
hated, but wasn't
god.
because of the next of kin.
And he did not have a will.
No
'Cause
will.
you could give your will you could give your money to
He
anybody,
died
right?
young, yeah, it was a younger guy. But
Oh,
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, if you have a will,
Wow.
you can give it to your cat.
Right.
Someone just did that in China.
I have seen that documentary about the dog that they gave the
Some
money to
woman
the
gave
dog.
She gave it to her cat and the
Wow.
veterinarian
Uh-huh.
instead of her kids because the kids didn't visit her enough. That was in China. Yeah, that was a recent case. Posted about that.
So when the cat so was
Right.
it
Then
just
it
the
they
veterinarian
don't
who
say they
said?
didn't say it in the article, but my guess is it then goes to the kids. Probably should just teach them a lesson.
Oh, wow, they have to wait for this cat to disappear
Yeah,
or
I
whatever.
guess.
So the prosecutor in California, right, when or the one that brought, Gasco, whatever, Gasco? Whatever, he brought the whole Menendez thing back up.
The new guy who got elected, yeah.
Well it was the guy that didn't get elected, right?
Oh,
Wa
I thought it was the guy who recently got elected was gonna say, "We're gonna look at this."
Yeah,
Did he lose the election?
yeah,
Oh,
he
okay.
lost the election, yeah, because it was supposed like, I guess the court date's supposed to be December 11th, so he was the one that vamped up all that, and it's weird because it was, like,
I
back
saw
in May
yeah,
and
they had a big press conference like a
yeah,
month ago, yeah.
yeah,
Oh, that guy lost?
so he lost, yeah, and they were saying because I watched TMZ and I was like
Yeah, yeah.
but they were saying on TMZ that, like, he kinda knew he was gonna lose, and he was like, they felt like it was like a last ditch
Yeah.
effort for him to be like, "Hey, everybody, I'm with you, like, I wanna let
Oh,
them
trying to
get
get
out of jail,
press. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so"
Oh, that's funny,
and,
and it didn't
oh,
work.
yeah, and then when he
Good.
was announcing it, like, somebody kept asking him, and he's like, "Oh, brother, like, this is not about the election, like, blah, blah," and then people were, like, trying to shut those reporters down and not ask the question, and "Don't
That's
be rude and
funny.
disrespectful," all this stuff.
So the guy who won is, like, a
The
more
guy that
hardcore?
won is well, I don't know, I don't think that he's on board, like, as well
Good.
as the other one.
I
He's
already
I
like him.
mean Oh my
No,
god.
yeah, I don't know what's I
Yeah,
mean, obviously I know that Gavin
interesting.
Newsom came out and said, I respect the whatever the district attorney
Oh,
decides." I
okay,
did see that
okay.
because I follow him on social media.
Okay, so all the everything that he did, then it just gets erased, right? Because the other guy comes in, and so I don't know what's gonna
Unless he
happen
does
to this.
something before his tenure's up, he can decide certain things, yeah, I'm sure if he's district attorney, they can
Okay.
evaluate stuff, but if he's probably not gonna do that, I don't think,
Yeah. Interesting.
unless he gets, like, a boatload of money from the Menendez family. I mean,
Right.
that's what happens. Let's not that a lot of people don't realize that, but that happens a lot. That happens with prosecutors, especially when people have wealth.
Mhm,
They can influence things with donations
mm.
to the district attorney. Maybe the
Wow.
maybe if you want to be a conspiracy person,
Mhm.
maybe the person who has the money that will lose it if will have to then face the Menendezes if they're let out, Menendai does I don't know the
The
plural.
Menendai.
Menendai. When they get out, he probably
Mhm.
was let's say it was the brother of the guy who got killed, the dad.
Okay.
He's like, "Wait, if they get out, then I'm gonna have to fight them for this money?" He's like, "I'm gonna endorse the guy
Oh,
who's gonna keep them in."
yeah. Yeah,
Again, that's
that's
conspiracy.
crazy. No, it makes sense. I will say brother to, the mom, seems to be the only relative that does not want them out.
The brother
Every
to Kitty,
Yes.
they're from,
Yes.
like, Illinois, right? She's from, like, they went to
Is she
Eastern
really?
Illinois or something
Oh,
like that.
wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
don't you remember from the movie?
I don't know. You know what? This is
It's
gonna
fine.
get my brother's gonna be like, "See?" Because I do not remember.
She's from
Watch a
Illinois, I think.
movie
I
probably.
can look that
Yeah,
up
I
while you're
can watch a movie and then, like, 3 weeks later, somebody's like, "Do you remember that scene?" And I'm like, "Oh God!" Like, I'll
That's fine.
remember more from a documentary probably than I will like a movie or a series, or I don't know why I don't remember scenes or anything like that. Well, I know she was like a beauty queen.
Hmm.
Um,
She
I don't know
was
why I thought.
Mary Louise Kitty Menendez.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. Let's see.
I know that they had some ties to Pennsylvania, I thought.
Suburban Chicago.
Oh, wow.
There's a
Interesting.
biography. Was born to a middle class family in suburban Chicago. Her father owned an air conditioning business. Her home life was very unhappy with a cruel, abusive father. There's a pattern here. Oh my God. Southern
So
Illinois.
she married her father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Attended college at Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, Illinois.
Hmm.
That's where she met Jose Menendez.
Interesting. I did not know that, the Illinois
Yeah, yeah,
ties.
yeah.
Huh. Yeah, so he is adamant that they should stay in jail, and all the other family members were with Giragos and like
Not all of them. I thought some of them weren't. I thought some of the family members were like, well, they
like
stayed out of it. Yeah.
oh, like indifferent.
Hmm.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I
No,
think I remember there was one that was like super advocate, but then after them they were convicted, I think they were like, oh shit,
mm,
these guys are animals.
wow. Yeah, interesting perspective. And I, growing up in church, I have friends that grew up in church too, and a lot of, and I mean, I guess it doesn't have anything to do with that because yours more like this is the law, but they're like, yeah, just shopping spree, like they're like bringing up all
Yeah.
this stuff, and I'm like, I mean, I don't know why I have so
They
much
spent
compassion for them.
$800,000 and on like the kid bought a Porsche 911.
Yeah, and I didn't realize that the shopping spree was the next day. I mean, not that it matters if you
It
wait a
does
week,
matter
but the next day I was like, ugh, it's
if
like
you
really cringy.
you killed somebody that was your whatever, just like harasser or abuser, um I guess you have some relief, but I just can't see you like going on a spree buying
Mhm.
a Porsche.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
that's why I don't like them because they have
yeah.
my dream car, but but
Where were they? Why weren't they
I
my friends?
again,
Yeah,
I don't I think their dad was probably hard on them, but they were
yeah.
both like very good at tennis. They were like
Mhm,
Division 1 capabilities.
mhm.
Um I
Yeah,
mean,
I think one of them hired a coach shortly after the whole
yeah,
thing
he was
too.
in Israel at the time. He was probably gonna go
Oh,
pro,
that's right.
and,
Yeah.
Eric was gonna be go pro or semi-pro or whatever.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
how you can be that. I don't know. I'm fortunate enough that I was never a victim of
Mhm.
sexual assault.
Yeah.
But I just don't I don't I there's just too many things that just don't make sense.
Yeah, I hear you.
I do
Um,
think that maybe their dad beat the hell out of him. I
mhm,
don't doubt that. And if if his dad did sexually abuse them as children,
mhm,
again, I don't know if that happened,
mhm.
but I still don't think that justifies the killing the way that they did it.
Yeah. I do think it's bizarre that the dad was a focal point in putting them into therapy. I thought that was bizarre because it's like
Yeah, why would you okay, that's another thing. Why would you put them in therapy
if you have like this
if
family
you
secret
yeah,
like that, like that's the last person I want you to go see is a
because then they
therapist.
get ideas for what they can do. Because if he let's just say he sends them to therapy and the kids are like, "I was assaulted." Like, okay, well, your options are these.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it. It's over for
I
the dad,
I find that very bizarre that
unless he was
the dad
like using it to like challenge them, like I dare you to tell.
um
But there's just too
definitely
many
a
hills.
narcissist for sure.
The dad,
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely a
so
narcissist.
was the kids. I think the kid was at
Yeah.
least the Lyle guy.
Yeah, I think the older one, they said like the older one was definitely more manipulative. Like I guess some guy that like spent some time with them in jail and he was like in the cell
Yeah,
next to them. He was like, "Oh, there's definitely a lot of
Yeah,
manipulation with
sure.
Lyle." Like, and Eric was a little bit more like nicer, like a like a genuine good person. But
Mhm.
he's like, I always felt like Lyle was a little bit more manipulative. So, yeah. But okay, do you think that they would have gotten away with it had they not told the therapist, had Eric not
No, I
fessed
don't
up to
think
the
they would have. I
therapist?
think eventually something would fall apart. In a case like that, when you have such a brutal murder,
Hmm.
and especially with the DNA evidence that came out like years later, I think
Mhm.
there would have been some sort of connection,
Yeah.
or the guns would appear.
Yeah, I
Things
didn't
would have
know,
happened.
till I saw the documentary with the female prosecutor, the first case, and, I mean, she just cannot with them, like, she's just like same thing, like, she's just like, "I hate the
She,
Menendez."
yeah, I watched her. I love what she said too.
Mhm.
She's like, yeah, she said it too. She goes, I don't know, maybe they were sexually abused, but
Mhm.
it still
Yeah.
doesn't change the fact that this was cold-blooded murder.
One thing I did not know, she had said um that they were onto them about the guns because they found out that they used somebody else's ID to buy the
Right.
gun. So they were already kinda onto them. And I think the therapist thing just exploded it.
The therapist thing, was after the fact. They already knew that they had an idea that they were witnesses.
Yeah. I mean,
That
that
they
they
were,
were
possible
yeah.
person they were always, persons of interest.
Yeah, and
The TV show doesn't show that as much.
right.
Make it seem like these guys were just letting them do whatever they want.
Yeah,
That's not true. They were always being watched, and they
yeah.
were following up. They knew about the shopping spree and everything.
Yeah, and because I often wonder, I'm like, "Man, they almost got away with it had they not told the therapist," but I
No,
guess not because the
they were
shopping spree was
idiots.
huge,
They were
and
also
then the gun thing was huge.
the gun, they would have traced it already, and then they're idiots too.
Mm.
So let's not forget that they were doing coke and partying and all that stuff. They were going to
Oh, I didn't
brag
know they
about
were
this.
doing coke and all
Well,
of that, yeah.
that's what that's what they insinuated
Oh,
in
okay.
the
In
movie.
the movie. Hmm.
Even if they weren't, they were partying.
Yeah, they were definitely
I can just see them bragging about it.
interesting.
They're not. They were. Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't the best of people back then.
I don't. I
Yeah.
just don't understand the logic of everyone being big fans of theirs now. It's just
Yeah.
again. I'm not saying that they didn't do their time. I'm a big fan
Mhm.
of giving people a second chance,
Mhm.
but that should be across everything.
Okay, and how does sentencing work? Because, like, to me, like, it seemed like in the second trial, like, they could only get life without the possibility of parole. So but then I hear, I watch a lot of, like, I love true crime, like
Hmm.
ID and, like, different cases and stuff like
Sure.
that. So I'll hear other cases where people were murdered and it's like, "Oh, they got 20 years," or they got 25 years. So does it go by state, the sentencing?
So sentencing, unless it's like sometimes there's mandatory minimums for federal
Okay.
crimes. For states, it's different. Um, sentencing goes by state. In this case, part of the sentencing was decided by a jury if they were going to be uh, um, convicted of death penalty.
Okay.
That's decided by a jury.
Okay.
But once it's up to the sentencing, once that's off the table,
Yeah.
sentencing, there are guidelines for judges, and ultimately
Okay.
the judge decides. So for um, the judge and the prosecutor decide. So, for
Okay.
example, in a case like this, there could be that sentence of 15 years to life imprisonment, and so they'll have different people come in and testify during sentencing.
Okay.
Typically, that's when you'll see victims' families come and say, "You tore apart our life," blah 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 blah
Mm.
blah, and then the prosecutor will make a recommendation to the judge, and the judge will ultimately have the final say.
Hmm.
Generally speaking, again,
Okay.
sometimes there's federal guidelines that are
Okay.
mandatory.
Okay.
There was a three strikes and you're out situation, and all felonies that for years, and judges were stuck to those. They had to do the minimums, even if it was like three strikes you're out. If it was like marijuana or whatever, as long as it's
Okay.
a law break. Or for criminal sentencing, it
Mhm.
typically the judge decides. And in this case, you might in some of the documentaries you talked about,
Mhm.
they needed to make an example of these kids because OJ just got released
Mhm.
and people wanted to LA to look tough. So I do think they were that part. I do think that they were pretty harsh sentencing because
Okay.
of everything else going on.
Right. Because really, I feel like there's like in crime and like or in law and like in courtrooms and for some reason too, I feel like there's like egos, right? Because like as a prosecutor, you want to win. You know
Well,
what
you
I
want to
mean?
win because you got to look tough on crime. And you want to win your
Okay.
election, and typically prosecutors then go on to run for president of the United States. So they want to
Okay.
have a good record uh,
Okay.
for being
Tough
tough
on
on
crime,
crime.
'cause then they get reelected probably or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so we've got about, a few more minutes, but I wanna
Sure.
talk about Jussie Smollett because you had brought that up when I
Yeah,
talked to you about this.
that piece of shit. Yeah, Kim Fox. Yeah, so
Yeah,
he was just released.
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with the Supreme Court of Illinois that where it was double jeopardy. He was tried and he got out, and then they decide Daniel Webb decided to make an example of him,
Mhm,
and they went to court to try to prove that he was guilty, and he was found guilty.
mhm,
Um, you can't charge someone with the same crime twice. That's just and
mm,
it was a different crime, but it wasn't. They were
mhm,
trying to say it was something else, but it was the same
okay.
evidence.
So when you okay, so Kim Fox is a prosecutor
Allegedly, yeah.
and
She sucks. She sucks. Sorry, Kim. I do.
No, you know what? I live in Indiana, and all I hear is like the bad things she does. But like I'll of course our all of our news is Illinois. And yeah, when because all this evidence came up that people that she was cutting somebody a favor because they were like, we can't
That's
have
probably an
him, blah
example
blah
of what we
blah blah
talked
blah.
about before, where he probably donated to her campaign
Mhm,
or something like that. I don't have evidence to prove that,
mhm,
but she was probably like, just turn the other cheek on this and
mhm.
go away.
Yeah,
I don't
because
know.
somebody got in her ear. I can't remember. It was a female that talked to her and was like, "Oh, yeah, we got to make this spear, whatever."
Yeah.
So then she was like, "Okay, and whatever." And then, so does that mean that, like, in that office, there, the guy that you mentioned, he's another prosecutor?
Daniel Webb was a special prosecutor who was appointed to try to look into this to see what happened because it was the way that it was dismissed
Oh,
outright. So
okay.
that's what he was. And Daniel Webb is an amazing lawyer. He's actually one of the best. He's from Winston and Strawn, I think, but he also is involved politically a lot of times. He prosecuted. I think he prosecuted Blagojevich. I could be wrong.
Oh,
No, no, no.
okay.
He's been a prosecutor before
Okay.
for high profile stuff.
So I guess my question is, okay, so she's the prosecutor. Oh,
State prosecutor.
can there be several prosecutors?
So she's the state's attorney for
Okay.
Chicago.
Gotcha. Okay.
There could be prosecutors for at the federal level. Federal prosecutors are different than state prosecutors.
Okay, gotcha.
Um,
Okay. So this man that you're talking about,
Daniel Webb,
he's
I think he was on the federal level, but no, yeah, no, that was tried in federal court. So
okay.
they were trying to find a law that was broken at a federal level.
Okay.
That's
So that
probably
they could
why.
still get him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they did get him, but
Yeah,
it
because
was
how long did
double.
he serve?
I don't
I
know.
think he didn't serve. They kind of released him on bail or something. He
Yeah,
served
he on
a
appeal,
while.
he appealed the
Okay.
decision, and I think he was let. Yeah, he served some time, but whatever.
Yeah, I don't understand the mentality behind him either because, like, I watched the first season of Empire. After that, they kinda lost me in the 2nd season. I was like, "Eh," and, there's just so much to watch,
So
but I felt like he was so super talented, good-looking guy, I mean, advocate for gay people. Like, I mean, just like, why would you ruin your career on a lie like that? Doesn't make
complete
any sense.
complete lunacy. When that story happened, I remember when it first happened,
Mhm,
I was with friends of mine who were Chicago police officers, and they're like,
mhm.
"This is weird." Well,
Yeah.
yeah, it does seem weird. Like, there's no
Yeah.
MAGA people in
Yeah.
downtown Chicago. Was there a
I thought it
rally?
was weird too because I live in Indiana and I'm like, okay, I
He
don't
told
see MAGA
me,
hats too much even around here, let alone in Chicago.
yeah.
Like I've never.
They
little
knew it was
bizarre.
bullshit from the beginning. The Chicago Police
Mhm.
Department knew it from beginning, and I
Yeah.
think they were gonna just let it go away, but he kept
Mhm.
pushing that it was
Mhm.
real, and he kinda was like
He kinda like,
and
no
and
intention
if you
hung
push
himself.
that you know that, then you must
Mhm.
if you when you're busted the first time when they kinda were like, "This doesn't seem real,"
Mhm.
and you're so confident,
Yeah.
that means he had some he knew that he wasn't gonna get in trouble. So maybe him and Kim Fox are buddies from the old day.
Maybe. Maybe. That's interesting. Yeah, 'cause
I don't know.
I just didn't I think there was too many factors, like, if you're gonna lie, so I think he went to the extreme. 'Cause it's like MAGA hat, the news, like,
It was
2
so
in the morning,
stupid.
cold, he was on
So
the
I'm a night
subway, like,
owl.
it's really
I know
bizarre.
where that happened because it was right by the WGN studio where I used to work,
Oh, okay.
and I used to be like, "I know that corner. I know exactly where he's talking about. There's
Yeah.
never anybody there except the homeless person. Like, there's no way this happened." And it's just it was all bullshit. And again, everyone's gonna
Yeah.
look at me and say, "Look, I'm a big advocate for second chances for people. I
Mhm.
think that
Okay.
we need to think about that with everything with crime,
Yeah.
especially when people commit crimes when they're very young, like the Menendez brothers, they were very
Yeah.
young.
Yeah.
And I think that they may have learned their lesson. Um, but when people don't learn their lesson,
Mhm.
that's where you're like, okay, you need to keep them. They're not
Yeah.
repairable. But
Yeah,
people
totally.
that have served their crime 40 years for murder, if you're 18 and you murder someone and
Mhm.
your life sentence and but you've been good in jail for 40 years, okay,
Mhm.
let's let them out. It's the
Mhm.
one crime. These 2
Right.
guys, I agree with you. I don't think they're gonna commit any other murders.
Yeah.
And they've served their time. They should be released.
Yeah. It's
But
been a long time, but yeah.
I would say the same thing about everybody. I think that when somebody has committed a crime, uh, a lot of times in the 90s, there was these mandatory sentences where they
Mhm.
were just trying to be tough on crime, and
Mhm.
they were crowding these jails because
Mhm.
money was to be made. Obviously, a lot of these companies
Yeah,
make money in
I
prison.
knew that till recently
It's all
that it
privatized.
is like there's money in keeping people in
Big money.
prison. I never realized that.
And we all pay for it. That's what's the crazy thing
Oh,
about it.
really?
Yeah, they have
Okay.
no bids. The prison systems that are being built all over the place,
Yeah.
there's no bidding on it. They go to their buddies that own it. It's if you look up all the prisons in the world, they're all connected to like former your former congressman and your former governor, all
No
kinds of people.
way. Whoa.
Not so much in Illinois, but down south it happens way more.
Okay.
All the
Huh.
people who donate the most to presidential campaigns,
Yeah.
typically on the Republican side, are always like prison systems. So
Oh
they
my
wanna have
god.
yeah, it's crazy. There's a
That
lot of
is
corruption.
crazy. Wow.
Um, but I do think the legal system works.
Do you?
I do.
Okay. So there's not a disillusionment
No,
of
not at all. I think that
okay.
there's times where it gets political, but I think look, I still believe in the law, and anytime I talk about politics, I'm always like, "Okay, well, let's go with the law." And I always like to
Mhm.
vote for me, I'll always vote for a candidate in any
Mhm.
position. If it's versus a lawyer or a judge against a non-lawyer, I'm always gonna vote for
Mhm.
the lawyer, no matter what.
Wait, say that again? If
If
there's a
2 people are
position
running
okay.
for a position
Oh,
and
okay.
one of them is a lawyer,
Okay.
I'll always vote for the lawyer,
Instead of the
non-lawyer,
the non-lawyer. Oh,
the
really?
business person, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Unless they're,
Okay.
like, completely like, I mean, Ted Cruz is a lawyer, but he's a piece of shit. But so is Allred. But, yeah,
Okay. Oh, Allred?
the guy who ran against,
Oh.
Ted Cruz.
Oh my gosh, my mind went to Gloria.
Oh,
Allred.
Gloria Allred?
I was like, "Wow, I've never heard
No,
anybody
she's
say she's
shady.
terrible."
She's pretty bad. But no, I think that the legal system I think we're in a position now in the world right now where people are gonna with the recent election, we're in a tough spot because we're just kinda like sweeping under the rug violations of laws that
Mhm. Mhm.
clearly happened, and people are just like, "Oh, no, we got railroaded." It's like, "No, I didn't."
Mhm. Huh, so the stuff that, like, Dr. Phil, I guess he talks about that, like, that he was getting bullied or that he didn't really do all those things or whatever, or they weren't
I think
charging
that
him
if
correctly,
you're
or I
talking
don't know.
about Trump, I
Yeah.
think the things that happened in New York, I definitely think were uh, he definitely committed the crimes, but they didn't enforce them against other people who did the same crimes.
Okay.
But the ones at the federal level that Jack
Mhm.
Smith was doing, those have been always the case. And
Mm.
people that say Jack Smith is a political case, he's the same guy who went after a guy by the name of Edwards, who was a vice presidential candidate
Mm.
when there was corruption, and he was a Democrat. So
Mhm.
Jack Smith is not a political guy. He's just you hire him when you want to
Oh,
find corruption.
Edward's the guy that was, like,
John Edwards was
sleeping around or
yeah, and he
something?
was using money to hide the fact that he was having an affair.
Oh, wow.
Similar to what happened in New York with Trump, but it was a little different. But it was at a
Okay.
federal level.
Oh, wow. I think I vaguely heard about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
It'll
know
be
a clip about
interesting to
that.
see how things pan out with
Yeah, for
the legal
sure.
system.
Yeah, most definitely. But it is interesting to talk to somebody that knows
Yeah,
law, and then instead of just, like,
I
people
do
on
know a lot.
TikTok, you know?
Well, that's what's funny is like everyone becomes a lawyer when that happens, and I'll just go on like Twitter, the res, and with the Smollett thing, people are like all like, "What the fuck?" I'm like, "You guys, listen,
Mhm.
you can't get a law degree from TikTok. You have to actually go to
Yeah.
3 years of law school and pass the bar."
Yeah, it kinda makes sense with the smell, although I, want him to it was a bad thing, but he was off the hook, and I guess then they were trying to try him again, so it's
Yeah.
like, okay, it was a decision already, but yeah, it's kinda interesting.
I mean, if you look at his career, it's over anyway. So I feel like
Okay.
he's done the
I love
time.
that because 'cause you're like, "It's always good for second chances," isn't it? That's why when
I
you
feel like he's got
is he done?
what is he's if he hasn't learned his
I think it's
lessons,
like
then he's an idiot.
yeah, it's really bad. I know he was really
He'll never
trying
be
there for
hired
a
anyway.
second. Yeah.
He's gotta find a second
I
career.
think that it would have been better.
Podcasting.
I mean, yeah,
But
maybe. I think that it would have been better if he would have just fessed up right away,
yeah,
right? And
yeah, he
just
could
been
have
like, "I'm an
all
idiot.
of
I'm
this could
so
have been
dumb.
done.
Like, I don't know what I was thinking,"
He
or
would have probably still been able to be an actor, like, by now.
yeah,
Now he can't do
yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah.
it's just some people, they just
Because he is sticking to his story still. He's sticking to the story.
I
He's
mean,
sticking to the
that's
story.
the thing that bothers me about politics now. It's like there's some like this president who's just like sticking to the story, and you're like,
Mhm,
you're rewarding bad behavior. Like this guy
mm,
clearly lied, and I'm not, whatever.
yeah,
People say that I'm being. I say the same thing about the mayor of New York.
okay,
He's a Democrat, and he got busted taking money from Turkey. It's like you can't do that.
okay. I don't know anything about
Yeah,
that part. Okay.
yeah.
Is he the mayor now?
Mhm.
Oh, okay. So he
Eric
took
Adams.
yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting. So he took money from Turkey.
yeah. Not a lot either, which is crazy. He could have got way more. He's not smart. He's dumb and corrupt.
That's a different combination.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, anything you wanna plug? I know you have your
No.
Parkinson's
Oh,
thing.
yeah. When is this
Well,
releasing?
I really wanna release it soon because, like, I
Yeah.
sometimes sit on it too long, but, I mean, in the next few days, I'm gonna
Come.
pop it
Yeah, that's fine.
out.
Come argue with me at the Parkinson's Foundation fundraiser I do, third annual. It's Zanies in Rosemont, Sunday, December 15th.
Okay.
I have a podcast called Why Are You Awake, where we stay up late and talk to comedians and creatives about their process.
Yeah, it's a really good podcast.
Yeah, it's
I've
fun.
been enjoying it, been watching some of it, but
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah. Thanks so much for
Oh,
coming.
yeah,
I
thanks
really
for having me. That
appreciate
was fun.
it. This is a great conversation.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, Suzanne.